Hello everyone, this is Praveen and I'm a DevOps engineer and a DevOps enthusiast. I have been working on various configuration management tools that includes Chef, Puppet, Ansible and a lot of other cloud frameworks such as AWS, CloudStack and OpenStack. Today's lecture is all about Ansible. Usually Ansible is integrated with most of the cloud frameworks such as Amazon, OpenStack and CloudStack, and having such a benefit is always been good for this Ansible. So to start on with, let me introduce what Ansible is. As seen in the slide, Ansible is ensured an IT automation configuration management and provisioning tool. It uses a new concept called playbooks, which usually used to deploy, manage, build, test, and configure anything from full server environments to websites to custom compiled source code for applications. So this playbook is written in a new framework language called YAML. YAML is a markup language and it reads from top to bottom. So before diving in completely on YAML, we are going to discuss what Ansible is. Usually, Ansible brings all the aspects of environment management, usually in infrastructure, and that differentiate between that of a traditionally managed infrastructure to automated frameworks. Ansible is as simple as an automation engine to manage most of the manual works convert into automation works, usually used in an infrastructure, infrastructure frameworks. So as we dive in further, we are going to discuss what is Ansible and how it's going to benefit in a normal traditional environment to automate most of the works. Remember one thing: we are going to use a new concept called playbooks, which is written in YAML. So before we dig on the concepts of playbooks, modules, tasks, and roles, we're gonna see what architecture it has been done on and how Ansible has been usually used to do a lot of works, something like a complete architecture and the framework. So let's take the control of the environment. How does Ansible make sure that it uses a complete framework? To start on with, we can see Ansible architecture is actually defined and used in such a way that it uses something called host inventory. It uses a new concept of playbooks, as I discussed in the last slide. It uses modules, a predefined modules from Ansible. As of now, there are 212 core modules in Ansible, which is given us along with the package, and there are custom modules written by public and the private open source communities. There are plugins which Ansible can be used in terms of logging and other parameters. So to highlight, I'm going to use a highlighter which is going to explain the Ansible architecture very cool. So usually Ansible is open source software which we are going to install in any kind of Unix and Windows environment. It has a certain parameters like host inventory, playbooks, core modules, custom modules, which is written by open and private communities. It has plugins which is gonna use something like email logging and other stuffs, which all connects to a new parameter called hosts. So hosts are something which are managed in a traditional data center environment. If we use Ansible, we can automate most of the traditionally managed environment, and such automation is called orchestration. So Ansible by default is an orchestration and a configuration management tool. There's a new format which Ansible has been used these days. They are usually connecting to the public and the private cloud. What kind of cloud Ansible integrates with? Usually, Ansible has a privileged integration with Amazon. It can be integrated with Red Hat OpenStack. It can be integrated with CloudStack as well to deploy and manage most of the hosts, which is launched in cloud network as well. There are two main things. One is Ansible can be used to manage traditional IT environment. It can be used to manage cloud IT environment as well. So let's go further to see what exactly Ansible can be used. Okay, so let's clear all the drawings here. This slide is about why Ansible, why not other tools. What is the major difference between Ansible and other automation and the configuration management tools? Basically, Ansible plays in the sandbox of a large number of deployment and configuration management tools such as Jenkins, Salt, Puppet, Chef, and Fabric. So Ansible plays a role called sandbox. How is it going to difference between Jenkins or any kind of Salt or any kind of Puppet tools? Ansible is a high little enough level that can be used to conjunction with one or more tools. Ansible can be integrated with more tools to deploy and manage most of the IT infrastructure framework, but it is often called as orchestration tool, but it functions independently as well. It can control one or more tools listed. Ansible can be used to control Puppet. Ansible can be used to control Chef, Fabric, Salt, and Jenkins. The main difference between the Ansible and the rest of the tools is as follows. Usually, Puppet, for example, is an instruction language which is not applied in order. So, Puppet language, the Puppet configuration management tool, does not have a top to bottom approach in the manifest. So, usually in Puppet, we have something called manifest, which is similar to playbooks in Ansible, but Ansible playbooks are written from top to bottom, and it's going to read from top to bottom approach, and it is a pure single order execution. But in terms of Puppet, it's not applied in order. It's applied in something called a manifest language, where it is randomly going to apply the rules. But in Ansible, it's from top to bottom. So if in case of any issues, we are easy to figure it out the problems, and we are easy to figure it out what can be the issue and fix it. So it's easy for an engineer to deploy an Ansible and maintain an engine compared to a Puppet. Now, other major differences are Ansible is built upon Python. Python is used in most of the infrastructure environment, end user environment, or any kind of modules. Python is used varied, and it's a huge standard of functionality that comes with. But in terms of Puppet, Puppet is written in Ruby language, and Ruby requires a kind of dependabilities, while Python does not require much dependabilities, and it's easy for Ansible to integrate. And most of the Linux and Unix distribution comes with Python predefined install. But in terms of Ruby should be installed in most of the environment if you want to use Puppet. So that's a drawback, and Ansible has an upper hand on it. Chuff or Salt are not quite so inclusive, because even Chuff and Salt are not written in Python; they are written in Ruby. The other problem with the Puppet is that Puppet is based on custom DSL, while Ansible is based on YAML standard. So YAML is a simple language, which is a markup language, where we are going to use that language, embed into a playbook, and execute the Ansible. So that we are going to see when we go ahead in the lecture further. It's just an introduction how Ansible can be used in an traditional environment and in a cloud environment, and why we are using Ansible compared to other tools. So, to summarize this introduction to Ansible chapter, it's extremely complex topic, but it's absolutely the core heart of the DevOps. So, consistency is one of the primary driving principles. So, if you want to use and manage the software dynamically, Ansible is one of the best option, because it uses a simple Python language which most of the environments has, and also it uses a top to down bottom approach in a YAML file. So we are going to see how YAML file is going to function, and how does this Ansible gets a benefit and gets a hitch over other programming language or other configuration tools such as Puppet or SaltStack. It uses a environment delivery lifecycle so that the business enabling functionality is constantly delivered, and this Ansible is having a something important feature called idempotent. That means if there is some changes happened, it has a new concept of versioning inbuilt. So Ansible is an ahead of compared to other tools. So this comes with an end of lecture 1, and hope to see. Thank you.